Well, this is absolutely stunning and incredible. Lev Parnas finally had a chance to go in front of the Republican House Oversight Committee. And yes, they're still doing their impeachment thing, another impeachment inquiry hearing into Joe Biden. Why? I don't know. It's embarrassing. Some of them are admitting we don't know where this is going and admitting that likely it won't lead to an impeachment because they just can't find anything. But it's continuing. This is how they're attempting to distract from the horrible candidate that Trump is and the incredible achievements that Biden has been implementing. And I have a clip here for you of former Giuliani associate Lev Parnas, who describes himself as someone who got pulled into the Trump cult, then was the guy going to Ukraine trying to uncover the dirt on Joe Biden. And this was back when Trump was president. And so he was working with Giuliani and then because of that with Trump to try to uncover dirt before the election to drop so that Joe Biden would not win against Donald Trump. Now, this, of course, was a part of Trump's first impeachment, if you remember. Trump trying to pressure Ukraine, specifically Zelensky, to announce that they'd be opening an investigation into Joe Biden to hurt him politically, into the very stuff that Lev Parnas, as you see on screen, was trying to find. Since then, Lev Parnas, who got to testify in front of this committee, he has been very clear that all of these allegations against Joe Biden, conspiracy theories, Russian misinformation operations, nonsense, and he, again, describes himself as being sucked into the cult, and then, as you'll see in clips that I have here for you, will absolutely expose Trump, Sean Hannity, and many others Republicans for the dishonesty of their attacks against Joe Biden. So first, here's Fox News, not super comfortable with what Lev Parnas had to say, and so they cut away from him. Then I'll show you the part that they cut away from.
The impeachment proceedings that bring us here now are predicated on false information spread by the Kremlin. Everyone involved knew.
So this bit of a preview right now. This hearing is going to be hot, so stand by for more on that. I want to bring in Jesse Waters right now. He's been sitting patiently to our left, watching this as well.
Stand by for whenever the witness who's in prison or the other ridiculous witness starts talking. Then we'll show you the parts that we think could be damaging to Joe Biden, but we're going to cut that off. Yeah, so what is it that they just did not want the Fox News audience to be exposed to? Well, here it is. Again, a former Giuliani associate, Trump stooge in a sense, who traveled the world round, that's the phrase, looking for dirt on Joe Biden and is here to say it's a wild goose chase. They're not being honest. They're lying to you.
From shortly after my arrest on October 9, 2019 to now, I have been trying to share the irrefutable truth with you. The American people have been lied to by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and various cohorts of individuals in government and media positions. They created falsehoods to serve their own interests, knowing it would undermine the strength of our nation.
While you're watching this, please make sure you are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Thank you.
From November 2018 to October 2019, I was a key participant and a witness to numerous efforts to prove that Joe and Hunter Biden were linked to corruption in Ukraine. Rudy Giuliani, on behalf of then President Donald Trump, tasked me with a mission to travel the globe, finding dirt on the Bidens so that an array of networks could spread misinformation about them, thus securing the 2020 election for Donald J. Trump. Ironically, when I was arrested, my original indictment linked me to an individual referred to as unindicted co-conspirator 1. We now know this individual to be Congressman Pete Sessions, who sits on this very committee today. Today, I ask you to consider the following. In nearly a year traveling the world and interviewing officials in different countries, I found precisely zero evidence of the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. No credible source has ever provided proof of criminal activity, not the FBI, CIA, nor the NSA. No respectable Ukrainian official has ever said that the Bidens did anything illegal, including former President Poroshenko and former Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko. Even when CEO of Burisma, Mykola Zlochevsky, was offered a deal by Rudy Giuliani in exchange for information on the Bidens, he provided none, because there is none. The only information ever pushed on the Bidens in Ukraine has come from one source, and one source only: Russia and Russian agents. The impeachment proceedings that bring us here now are predicated on false information spread by the Kremlin. Everyone involved knew they were sharing lies. From Trump and Giuliani's shadow diplomacy, through my missions to Ukraine and elsewhere, to members of a BLT team, a group convened for the sole purpose of investigating and damaging the Bidens.
So this is probably going to end up being a pretty long segment because there's so much that I want to say and so many videos I want to show you. Just devastating for Republicans. Can you even call it an impeachment inquiry? That's what it technically is, but their failed impeachment effort already. Again, as some are conceding that, yeah, this is not going to end in anything significant, except for the fact that Jamie Raskin will point out in just a little bit that this has been one of the most humiliating and unsuccessful investigations done in Congress in American history. And the really sad thing that I've talked about a lot in the past is while we observe that because we've been keeping up with this and we observe that this should be a huge embarrassment for the Republican Party, they've actually successfully convinced a lot of people who aren't going to be unconvinced, who are not going to be dissuaded of this belief that Joe Biden's corrupt somehow, even though, again, it's just crumbling. Obviously, as Lev Parnas pointed out there, a lot of this has been an overt effort, allegedly by Russian intelligence, to attack Biden using false information through, in the case of Alexander Smirnov, an informant that Republicans would pretend was so credible who later was indicted for fabricating the story to the FBI. Again, getting this information allegedly from Russian intelligence, this false information. And so that should be something that causes introspection on the part of Republicans, causes remorse, causes an admission of failure, but it's not going to. And so because of that, these sorts of hearings where other witnesses who we've discussed why their allegations against Biden are silly will be perceived as more legitimate, and the pomp and circumstance of a congressional hearing makes people think there's something legitimate about it, and then Sean Hannity goes on and makes it all seem so significant. So people actually believe something's being uncovered here when really it's the humiliation of the decade for Republicans. But again, some people aren't perceiving it that way, and that's the issue. Let's watch a little bit more from Parnas, then we'll move on.
To start trying to push narratives that were that were not validated. We had no way to validate them. Basically, a letter would come over from somebody in Ukraine. I'd hand it over to John Solomon. Next thing you knew, he was on Fox TV 2 hours later with Sean Hannity.
It's interesting learning from these sorts of testimonies, and as I've dove into the different documents that get referred to and the different previous testimonies that get referred to, allegations, piecing together how this all gets, pieced together, how they create this web of distortions, delusions, allegations that under the slightest bit of scrutiny fall apart, but because there's all these different sort of connected elements, it seems like there has to be something to it. Understanding how that all comes together is a disturbing fact because it shows you how inaccurate information can really have legs. It can really last a long time. And that is really unfortunate. And then here I mentioned earlier about Parnas saying that he was in a cult, and this was that moment.
In my several years living through this extraordinary period of American history, I've tried to ask people like Michael Cohen and Cassidy Hutchinson. I've wondered about people like General Milley, General Kelly. Why did you break with all of the deceit and corruption and lies of Donald Trump? How did you get out of that culture?
I mean, it was very difficult. I actually had to hit a brick wall myself and get arrested, and to be able to get out of that cult, because when you're in that cult, when you're around them, you have blinders on, and you're only able to see a certain amount of information. You're only able to hear the certain amount of information. You're not allowed to go out of the circle. And if you go outside of the circle, then you're not in the circle. So eventually you brainwash yourself to believing certain things that are not true. When I was arrested and had some time to reflect and really understand what was going on, I started realizing, looking back and thinking back to moments in time of where I started thinking myself that this can't be true and we're doing something wrong.
Well, thank you for.
Wow. Credit to him for being willing to speak out like that. Because you know the hate, the threats that's going to come of this sort of testimony. And it's why for so long Republicans tried to prevent Parnas from coming in front of the committee. Parnas kept saying, I can come and tell you, I'm the guy you're looking for. You keep talking about all these allegations. I'm the guy who is assigned to look into this stuff for Trump and for Giuliani years ago. And that's the other thing that's important to keep in mind. This has been going for years. Yes, this is the latest version of them trying to put life back into the allegations against Joe Biden that are just baseless. But it's been going on since Trump's administration and him trying to hurt his potential political opponent. And for as much as I've said so many times in the past that Republicans talk about witch hunts against Trump or politically motivated attacks that are weaponizing some institution of power, that's what we're observing here with what they're doing to Joe Biden, trying to weaponize Congress and their oversight ability to smear him. That's what it is. They're using information that they got from an informant who was indicted for lying to the FBI about this very subject. And he allegedly, or he admitted in his interview with the FBI, that he was receiving this from Russian intelligence, at least parts of it. And then you have Lev Parnas coming forward saying, this is just, it's not true. Stop it. And still they continue. And still they try to prove things that now for years they have been unable to prove. Eventually they're going to have to accept that unlike their guy, there's just no corruption no matter how much you dig in Biden's past. And that's the takeaway from this entire investigation. Here is Jamie Raskin being wonderful as always.
With any luck, today marks the end of perhaps the most spectacular failure in the history of congressional investigations. The effort to find a high crime or misdemeanor committed by Joe Biden and then to impeach him for it. In prior hilarious episodes of this long-running madcap series, America got to see the following. 1, nearly 20 fact witnesses who could not identify a single act of wrongdoing by President Biden, much less a high crime and misdemeanor, and who overwhelmingly testified that Biden was not involved in any of his family's business adventures. 2, 3 expert witnesses called by the majority itself who said nothing that they had seen in the tens of thousands of pages of documents adduced by the majority even remotely approached the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. Bank records which show exactly what all the witnesses told us, that Joe Biden was not involved in his family members.
For the sake of time, I'll stop it there, but he just goes on and on to outline all the things we've been discussing. So I want to jump on now to break down the Lev Parnas part of it, the fact that he just absolutely is shredding the Republican narrative during this hearing, but it's still going on right now as we speak. So if something else comes of it that's notable that I want to discuss, I'll jump on and talk to you about that as well. But if Republicans had any shame, they would announce at this hearing that they're ending their ridiculous investigation into Joe Biden. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can get the bonus show daily at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership.